Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you please allow us 5 more minutes just to allow other audiences to join in, please? Thank you.
Did you attend the
Good afternoon, colleagues.
Good afternoon to you.
Oh, that's great. It's great to hear a voice. It was dead quiet, and I was wondering whether we've started. I thought I might have, should I say, audio problems or something like that.
We are already tuned in.
Oh, lovely.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon
to you.
We are beginning now. I would like to welcome everyone to our 9th live session of RSWS 2021. My name is Vinolia, and I'm the marketing coordinator for ASCA, which is African Institute for Supply Chain Research.
We've lost you, ma'am.
Yeah, good afternoon to you all. I think we lost Vinolia. She was trying to introduce herself as the marketing and event coordinator for ISCA. Indeed, colleagues, we are blessed to have Prof. Chisasa here with us today, who is going to provide executive insight into quantitative research method. I call it executive insight because Professor Chisasa is a full professor in finance, risks, and banking, in finance in the Department of Finance, Risks, and Banking in the University of South Africa, specifically the College of Economics and Management Sciences. Indeed, he is one of the scholars that have done extremely well in terms of research, and especially with quantitative research. I see Vinolia is now on board. Vinolia, you can take over.
Thank you, Prof. I would like to greet you once more. Welcome to our 9th live session of a research support webinar series. Like I said, my name is Vinolia, and I'm the marketing coordinator for ASCA, which is African Institute for Supply Chain Research. Before we continue with this session, I would like for everyone to please mute their mics to avoid background noise. And also for those who have questions and comments, you can write that in the chat box. And also those who would like to present their questions, they will be given an opportunity after the presentation to do so. Today we have our guest speaker, who is Prof. Joseph Chisasa from the University of South Africa. Prof. Joseph Chisasa is a former corporate banker and risk manager, a professor in finance in the Department of Finance, Risk Management and Banking of the University of South Africa. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce honors degrees in banking and a Master's of Science degree in finance and investment from the National University of Zimbabwe. He is a holder of a Doctor of Commerce degree from the University of South Africa. His research interests are in agricultural finance, banking, credit risk management, and collective savings. He has published...
Can support.
Can I please continue?
Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Prof. Joseph Chisasa, he has published in an international journals that include the Applied Business Research, International Business and Economic Research Journal, Journal of Agribusiness and Rural Development, among others. He has supervised master's and doctoral students to completion. Currently, he is involved in the implementation of the African Union Agenda 2063 through research capacity development under the auspices of the AUC UNISA Memorandum of Understanding. In particular, he is part of the university's research team driving the UNISA and the Blue Economy Project within poor communities in cities and in villages across South Africa. Prof. Chisasa has conducted workshops aimed at educating the less advantaged in the area of financial management and business proposal writing and household financial management. Let's all welcome Prof. Chisasa. Prof. Chisasa, you can continue, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vinolia, for that long and winding introduction, which I hope will not raise too many expectations from the audience. But nevertheless, I appreciate that decoration, and I want to welcome all the audience to the lecture, which I hope you find useful at the end of the day. Thank you once again to ASCA for the invitation. It's an honor and privilege for me to be part of the human capital development process for the African continent, something which I think the heads of states through the Africa Union Commission seek to achieve, as is inscribed in the Africa Union Agenda 2063 blueprint. So today we are going to be talking about quantitative research methods. And I think that all of you who are in this meeting already have an appreciation or knowledge of what quantitative research methods are. And it would be folly for me to make an assumption that none of you have had some stint with the quantitative research methods, as it were. So my plea is that let's make this conversation as interactive as possible. And I'm mindful of the fact that you also have got some large stocks of knowledge about research, and therefore, should there be anything that you find that I may have omitted, please feel free to edit on the chat so that the rest of the attendees and myself can also benefit from that interaction. And so, again, if there's anything that I may have left out of the presentation that you think should have been included, I would appreciate your input in that regard. So you will find that my presentation is largely more practical than theoretical, as in that I will focus on highlights of what constitutes quantitative research methods, because as you are aware, we have got only an hour to discuss this topic, and arguably research methods of any type are quite an extensive subject in the field of research. For your studies, you will find that often a time people dedicate a month, 2 months, 3 months to complete a chapter on research methods. And so for me, I think that an hour would just give us an abstract of what goes on in the quantitative research methods space. And in this particular lecture, you will see that we will speak about the methods part and also overlap into how to do the reporting of quantitative research results, which I think is more important over and above just the methodological aspects. So having said that, I shall now move on to share with you, let me see now what is going on here. Okay, it seems to me that we will experience a bit of a challenge from my side from a technology perspective. I was trying to keep the big screen on, but now I've been reduced to where I belong. Can you all see my slides?
Yes, they're visible.
Thank you very much. So my presentation will speak to explaining what...
We can see your presentation. If you can just put it in the presentation mode.
Thank you very much. I just could not move to the next slide. That's why I reduced it to this, but I'll try again. Thank you, Prof. Are we fine now? Can we see? If so, I shall proceed.
Yes, we can confirm it's fine.
To go. Yeah, we're going to introduce the lecture and then discuss or define quantitative research and a little bit of why we use quantitative research, the reasons for that. And we're going to also spend a bit of some time on types of quantitative research methodologies and for me, how to interpret findings in a quantitative research project, which I think in most of the research projects that I have interacted with, most of us tend to struggle with how to give meaning to the findings of our research. So we're going to see how we may have to deal with that particular challenge and how to report the findings in quantitative research. So having said so, I think that in the research space, there is quite a number of methods or designs that one can actually choose to use when conducting a research project. But again, I think it's important for us to look at what leads to a decision on a particular design. I think that what is important for me is that as you conceptualize your research project and then spell out what your research project is, it is from that which you will then develop your research objectives, which will essentially lead to the kind of research design that you must then apply in your research project. And I think this is the most critical part because it informs everything else of what follows. So when you look at the designs that are most commonly used, the quantitative research design is one of them, followed by the qualitative research design. And then in some instances, people choose to use both, often referred to as mixed methods. And I want to say that in the mixed methods research, people have mostly used qualitative and quantitative data to come up with what they call the mixed methods. However, you can also, in my thinking, you can also mix different types of quantitative data. In this case, you could use, say, primary data and secondary data in one particular, in one study, so to speak. So again, often a time it is used where you probably want to confirm the results of one type of analysis using one type of data, and then you bring in another type of data. So what exactly are we referring to when we speak about quantitative research? In quantitative research, loosely speaking, this is a process of collecting and analyzing numerical data. This is opposed to, say, the process of collecting and analyzing non-numerical data, which is referred to as qualitative data. So in this instance, you are collecting data using numbers, and such data could, examples of such data could be, let's say, data on, perhaps to be very current, data on how many people have contracted the coronavirus since 2020 in March. And then in that case, you will be looking at how many people contracted this virus on a periodic basis. Your period could be anything from, say, 1 day, if you want, 1 day, weekly, monthly, quarterly, half-yearly, or annual data. I think at this stage, if someone was going to be doing a research that includes this kind of variable, annual data would be very limited because we have only been grappling with this particular pandemic for about 1.5 years now. So if you want to use annual data, it will only be for 1 year, and so you won't you won't be able to conduct some good statistical analysis on only 1 year. And then that means you have to then look at more frequent data, that is a higher frequency, which could be weekly data or fortnightly data, or I think quarterly data will probably give you like how many quarters now? 6 quarters. Yeah, that could probably give you just some fair view of what the kind of complexion is so far as infections of the coronavirus is concerned. Then again, the data that you have to collect there depends on the type of study that you are doing, because sometimes you find that if you're going to do, say, just some simple descriptive analysis, you could do it over, say, two time periods, even 1 period for that matter. But if you're considering, say, doing some more sophisticated quantitative analysis, such as, say, your regression analysis or analysis which is based on time series, that means you will need some sizable amount of data. When I say sizable, I mean that you have to be complying with the assumptions or the rules of that particular statistical technique. In the case of your regression analysis, you could be looking at, say, the time, 32 time periods, for instance, and then at that point you'll be able to conduct your regression analysis depending on other things. So quantitative data is or research is research that is normally based on statistical data, which and again you are looking at phenomena that are measurable and factual. I think that is most important. You need to be able to quantify your variables that are involved in the study. And then with quantitative research, you are able to uncover patterns. For instance, if you're looking at trends of a certain behavior or a certain variable, you should be able to uncover that particular trend using time series data, which is data which spans over a certain period of time. In some cases, some people use experimental designs to come up with the results of what they want to achieve. Again, mindful of the fact that all of what we do here is trying to find a solution to a problem that we have identified. So in a sense, we are using this data to answer questions that we have generated stemming from the research problem that we have identified. In some instances, people use surveys to collect data that is then used to analyze, analyzed and then the results of which are used to provide answers to unanswered questions. For instance, at the moment, there's a lot of debate on whether the use of coronavirus vaccines is a noble idea or not a noble idea, of whether or not it is the right thing to continue using the vaccines or not. The argument being that some people have identified some, what do they call them, by the way, this thing of getting sick after taking a certain medication. Side effects, yeah, I meant to say side effects. There are claims that some of the vaccines which people are taking now actually causing side effects, which kind of justifies an argument for the stoppage of the use of the coronavirus vaccines. So you can only make such claims after maybe conducting a survey or maybe even using some kind of secondary data that comes out of the results of the experiments. So those are some of the aspects of quantitative research, that when you make claims, your claims must be based on evidence. They must be based on scientific evidence. In other words, the survey data that you use or the secondary data that you use to analyze or to answer a certain question is what constitutes the evidence that is required to support your arguments. So why do we use quantitative research? We do because it uses quantifiable data to articulate facts and reveal patterns in research. And it also helps understand the relationship between an independent and a dependent variable in a population. And again, it is objective because, as you will probably have heard and as you will know, numbers do not lie. And when you do it correctly, you will be able to generalize the results of your particular research study. So I think it's important for us to also, for me to point out that in quantitative research, we are able to probably just describe a certain situation or to test for relationships between two or more kind of variables. In this instance, I'll give an example of how we, if we look at perhaps the response of the market, of the financial markets, for instance, with a bit of bias coming from a finance background, the response of the financial markets to the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic since March 2020. I think that is in that instance, you are able to kind of put together data that represents a response to this particular shock, which is the coronavirus pandemic. In a sense, you are able to say what was the position of the market, or let's say the stock market, for instance, in March 2020, from March 2020 through to say March 2021, and then you collect data on the performance of the stock exchange between that particular time period. That data could be, the frequency of the data could be your choice, whether you want to use quarterly data, monthly data, and again, guided by the kind of statistical analysis technique that you're going to use. So you will do that, and because we are looking at a period that is kind of followed by a shock, which takes the form of this COVID-19 pandemic, you are then required to look at a similar period before that particular shock for you to be able to come up with a meaningful comparison, or for you to see whether or not the pandemic has had any significant effect on the performance of the financial market or the stock market. So this is what I mean here, say the quantitative research will help you understand the relationship between an independent variable and a dependent variable. In which case here, the stock market the financial market will be your dependent variable, and then the coronavirus pandemic, the crisis itself, among others, will be your explanatory variables for how the financial market is performing. Now, one of the things that is very important in quantitative research is the availability of data. And I think it is one of the most challenging aspects of research, because if you've got a research idea for which data is not available, then you are better off not proceeding with that particular idea. The most important thing is for you to be able to identify your source of data, and the data that you're going to use must be of a very good quality for you to be able to produce some good and useful results. So most of the time, most projects have been found to use primary data or secondary data. In some cases, people who use primary data end up also using secondary data just to do some double checking, only if it is necessary to do so. I can also share with you my experience in that particular kind of setting where I had to use, my primary project was based on secondary data, but because of some deficiencies in the secondary data, I had to use primary data in order to augment the deficient secondary data. So as I indicated earlier, primary data is that which you will go to the field with a questionnaire to collect data. When I say go out, I mean here that you may go in person, or you may use some electronic means to deliver your questionnaires to the respondents in order to collect that data. Okay, then secondary data is data which is collected not necessarily for your study, but it would have been collected by other agents for their particular purposes. But then you find that that data is useful for your particular study. I can make reference, say, to data on inflation, interest rates, gross domestic product, populations of respective jurisdictions, and so forth and so on. That data may ordinarily have been collected for either for census issues or just for a particular country or economic agent to understand the behavior of the economy in the country in which they are resident, or of an economy of interest, so to speak. So, but then if you use it yourself, it becomes secondary data, because you're actually using it for other purposes other than for which it was originally collected. So I think this, when you look at quantitative data and relate it to qualitative data, as I said earlier on, quantitative data is numeric in nature, while qualitative data is in words, which can either be verbal words, which could or include, for some people who do documented analysis, that kind of data becomes non-quantitative and therefore qualitative. So what I would like to suggest, though, is that when you are going to do your research methodology, or even perhaps before you do that, it will be very useful for one to consider consulting a statistician, especially once you've developed your research objectives, because at that point you are able to determine what kind of data you will need. Also, you'll be able to determine what kind of statistical or econometric analysis method or technique will suit the kind of objectives that you are putting on the table. Many a time we find that people battle or grapple with aligning the research objectives that they have or they need to achieve with the kind of data that they use, and ultimately the kind of analysis techniques that they use, which I think will be a waste of time, a waste of resources, and can be very disheartening at the end of the day when the project does not seem to move. And it's always the case that when you've got a misalignment of these aspects of your research project, you get frustrated and you don't make progress as a result. Now, once you've got your data in place, the next thing will be to analyze that particular data. And perhaps before you do the actual number crunching, the most important thing is to make sure that your data has been cleaned, has been put into usable shape. It's a process that is very time consuming. Most of the time you find that you either would have, if it's, depending on the size of the project, you will have engaged other people to assist you with the data capturing. And most of the time you find that the data capturing may not have been done in a manner that you expected it to be done. And so you will need to do the cleaning of the data so that it gets into some form or shape that is easy to analyze. And I think before you do anything else, that part of data cleaning becomes the first step that you take towards the interpretation of your data, because then you can see whether the data is actually speaking to the research questions that you asked. Now, how then do you go on to analyze your data? I think that depends on the research objectives that you ask. And I think that for most quantitative studies, it's very important for you to gain an understanding of the nature and attributes of your data, which you then are able to do by use of your descriptive statistics, where you are able to, for instance, look at your frequencies, your means, your standard deviations, which will show you whether or not your data is meaningful and it warrants even further analysis. Depending on the nature of the analysis that you want to do, you could also, I think, perhaps if let's say if you're using primary data, one other aspect which I think I need to mention is the importance of testing your research instrument, often referred to as the questionnaire, for its validity and reliability. That is very important, so that you make sure that you collect data that is going to be useful for your particular study, and that is testing the questions that you intend to answer. That I think is very important. Often a time, most studies and most researchers have used the Cronbach's alpha test for that purpose. And of course, there are several other alternatives that one may consider or may include. For instance, you also want to test the data, the research instrument by doing a pilot study, pilot test, and it's very important that you have a feel of what your respondents think of the composition of the questions in the instrument. That you identify by the way how they respond to the questions. And so that gives you an opportunity to reconfigure your questions so that you make sure that they are understood in the way that you want them to be understood, because only then will you be able to get the answers that you expect from the respondents, and of course the data that you need to be able to answer the research questions and objectives of your study. I think speaking of the data itself, and primary data in particular, I think it's worth mentioning that as you know, your data must come from a particular source which you will have identified, a particular population, so to speak, which you have identified. And one of the challenges that we have in primary data collection is of course identifying or getting to know the actual the population of the target respondents. And that for me is a very difficult challenge, particularly for people who are going to do research in areas for which data is sparse or is not there at all. So the question that one would have to answer is, how do you determine your sample size if you don't know the population? I think that's an area that requires some investigation at the onset. Not taking of chances to just go and collect data and think, because I've got 230 respondents, that should be enough. Maybe because they've read a few articles that have used a similar size sample. You also need to be informed as to how you calculate or you estimate the population, as well as estimating the sample size. That for me is very important. It's documented, it's there in the literature, how you can determine the population, or how you can deal with the situation of a lack of data on the population. I'm aware of situations where a lot of people do studies on, for instance, SMEs in a particular region, or or a certain population group for which no information is readily available. Those kind of studies, there are many people that have got so much appetite in those spaces. So we need to determine, we need to compute that particular population and compute the estimated sample size. And again, it's important for you to determine the type of sampling that you're going to use and justify it sufficiently with literature, which is again very important. You just don't thumbsuck that I'm gonna do, say, what do you call it, multi-stage sampling or random sampling. again, it's got to be justified sufficiently with some literature of some sort. Some studies have used the regression analysis, and I think it's important for you to understand that you don't just throw in a regression analysis model without justifying its choice, because there are many other techniques that one could use. I'm thinking now perhaps that you could choose on, say, structural equation modeling. You could choose on some other econometric modeling techniques, your least squares, simultaneous equations, and so forth and so on. So you need to select an analysis technique which is guided by your research objectives and also guided by the literature. Important for you, I think for me, I would say that I would suggest that for any study that you do, it's important to look at what other studies have been done along that particular area, and look at the kind of methods that have been used and how they have been used, and see how they relate to your study. You could probably adapt that, and maybe with some modification to suit your particular study, especially for those of you who are doing their doctoral studies. I think it would be very important for you to make sure that you don't just copy and paste stuff. You demonstrate that there is some contribution that you are making to scholarship, either methodologically or by way of identifying that research gap. That for me is very important. So that said, you also may want to use some statistical techniques or econometric techniques that seek to give you some, to model some prediction of some sort. Again, that depends on what you want to achieve in your particular study. Now, for me, you find what I've observed as a supervisor and as an examiner of master's and doctoral studies is that most of the candidate researchers tend to struggle with the interpretation of the data that they have, that they put together, and also the results that come out of it. It's important for you to know that once you've identified the variables that you're going to use in your study, be able to define them. Once you've given them a definition, you will be able to then assign a measurement to that particular data type. And when I say you need to define them, the definition must also be guided by literature. And you always have to cite the source of your definition. If you can cite more than one source, so much the better, because it galvanizes your knowledge of that particular variable. And so I would like to say that it's important for one to say that once the results are out, all of us can read numbers, all of us can see that if you're testing the relationship between two variables, for instance, we can see that for instance, in a regression analysis model, that a certain variable has got a negative coefficient, or a certain variable has got a probability value which is significant. But I think what is more important for the reader of your thesis or dissertation is the meaning of those of the output of that particular variable. For instance, if we say that the relationship between an interest rate and the price of a bond is giving you a beta coefficient of, say, minus 0.2345, what does that mean? Probability value is a 0.001. What is the meaning of this set of outcome? For us, that is what is more critical, because it informs the outcome or the outcome of the study, which could be a policy change or policy recommendation of some sort. So We would like to say that once you've got your results set, link that output with, say, the theory, for instance, or the practice of what is happening within the research space, your particular research space. If I'm looking at, say, interest rate and the bond prices, I would, for instance, say that a negative coefficient, a negative beta coefficient, implies that there's a negative relationship between the interest rates and bond prices, which is true in theory because the relationship between those two variables is inverse. In other words, as the interest rates rise, the bond prices tend to go down. So we would like to see what probably could have happened in the market. For instance, you could, for instance, give examples of what happened in that particular market to say when South Africa, for instance, were declared the lockdown in 2020, that was followed by a reduction in the repo rate, which is a reduction in the interest rates, so to speak. And because the interest rates and bond prices or bonds have got an inverse relationship, ordinarily you would expect that when the repo rate was reduced, the interest, the bond prices went up. So you can see that it's the kind of interpretation one would want to see in the results of one's study. And then, of course, you need to make some inferences guided by the output of your research, and of course supported by other studies. So how do you present your results in a research project? In some studies you may need to use tables to just give a snapshot of what your output is like. I think it's easiest that way. For instance, your descriptive statistics, you would feed them in a table which shows the variables under study and also the descriptive statistics that you have used, which may include, say, your standard deviation, your mean, your maximum, minima, as the case may be. For the reader, it will be easier just to see in a snapshot what your data looks like. And then you could also use your tables for say results to where you are probably testing the correlations of the variables in your study. Again, that shows you how correlated your variables are, and of course, before you even read what's written in the report, you already have gotten a sense of what kind of relations subside within amongst the variables that are in that particular study. And of course, you could also use your tables to present your moderate to advanced analytics, like your regression results or some such other tables that are used, say, when you do your econometric analysis. Now, I think let me see if I can be able to open this document and just share with you some of an example of what I'm talking about here. This may not be the alpha and omega of it all. If I may ask, can you see the document that I've just opened now, or must I? Let me see, stop sharing, share screen, and I'm gonna go here, share. I thank God that I'm getting clever. Can you see the article that I've posted here?
Yes, we can see, Prof.
Yes. Okay, that's fine. So this is an example of the presentation of one's results. I've just taken out an article that a colleague of mine and I wrote back in 2012. It's as old as that, but I think the concepts are still as useful, where my colleague and I were analyzing trends in credit to smallholder farmers in South Africa. So this particular article sought to just demonstrate that the amount of credit that is being given to smallholder farmers in South Africa, when compared to other borrowers such as the commercial farmers and the extent private sector, is very small, and that is why arguably that particular sector of farming is not growing as fast as it should. So in this study, we then used the data for the period 1970, if I can get that, for the period 1986, actually 1986, as you can see, to 2009. So in this case, we use time series data. Remember I say that the nature of the data depends on the type of study that you want to do. And so because we wanted to follow trends, we had to use time series. So you can see that in this table, it says credit data, economic indicators. And so we got a column here for smallholder debt. That is the debt that we assigned to the smallholder farmers. And when you compare it to other like total farm debt, as a percentage of total farm debt, it's very small. When you look at the commercial farm debt, it's also far less than what one would have expected. And I think the size gets smaller and smaller as we move up to the present day. So one way we presented the outcome was using graphs, because then we were doing a trend analysis. We used graphs. Okay, like in this first graph, you see the ratio of smallholder farm credit to GDP. It's always been going down from as far back as 1986 to 2009. I think it could be worse now if that trend was allowed to continue. Then let me skip the graphs, and then I'll. In this case, we didn't tabulate anything. Our trends were purely on, we used the graphs to present that particular argument. Okay, so I will then go back to the, just a moment. Can you see the slide? Hello?
No, we can't see any.
Can't see any. Okay, just a moment, please. I want to take you back to the slides. Okay, share screen. My goodness me, I think it was nice that I shared that disclaimer. Okay. I'll be with you in a moment. Okay, there we go. Share screen. Okay, share. All right. In another study between my colleague and I, we looked at the implementation of a risk management framework in developing markets. In this particular study, we were looking at the knowledge level of workers of a particular bank in East Africa on the risk management framework. So what we did is that we collected data using a questionnaire. And so in this case, we had a population of 33, and we used the entire population. We didn't have to sample because the number of people involved in risk management were quite few. So you can see that in this, when we were reporting our results, we just used graphs, and in some cases we used frequency tables just to show how many people, for instance, utilize audit reports, and how many people knew about KRI reports and all that kind of stuff. And we also used pie charts. Again, I think I want to demystify the issues around quantitative research methods, because most people think that quantitative research is all about using highly sophisticated methodologies. That is not the meaning of quantitative research. I think that we need to understand that what is most important is how you present your results and how you report them, how you write, how you present the meaning of those particular the numbers that you put on the table. So, okay. Now, the last article I'm going to share with you just demonstrates to you how you present your results when using, say, econometric analysis. Just trying to move from the simple reporting to the more sophisticated, and just to say that it's neither here nor there how you present them. Okay, I'll be with you in a moment. Okay, I managed to open the article. Okay, so in this article, we looked at the relationship between bank credit and agricultural output in South Africa, but mainly focusing on the co-integration, short-run dynamics, and causality. In other words, we're looking at whether these two variables are related in the short run, in the long run, or whether they do cause each other, which is the causality aspect. In other words, whether bank credit does cause a growth or decline in agricultural output, and whether or not agricultural output does cause an increase in bank credit. So that was the main purpose of this particular study. So in this particular instance, we used secondary data of a time series nature, which I think spanned the period 1970 to about 2012, 2013, thereabout. So what we did then is that, and one thing I would like to share with you also is that when you use time series data, you would have to subject it to certain tests to make sure that it conforms to the rules or assumptions for regression analysis. One of which is to make sure that the data is not volatile, it's static. So we do what we call unit root tests, and that is what we did to begin with to make sure that it's usable. And so again, we did all the preliminary tests that are required for one to come up with to be able to do the test for co-integration. Remember that we said we wanted to test if there's a long-run relationship between the two variables. To say can we say with confidence that in the long term, if we apply credit to the agricultural sector, there is going to be productivity that is sustained. So that was the main purpose of the study. So as we were presenting our results, these are the kind of results that we found for the long run relationship. So what I want to emphasize is the fact that if you see these results, you'll see that on the left, we have got the variables that were tested against the dependent variable, which is agricultural output. And then on the right, we have got the coefficients of the variable. Emphasize here is that we need to be able to say, as we look at, say, a variable L cap form, which is the logarithm for capital formation, and we see this particular number 0.62666 and the 3 stars. Yes, we can see that the relationship there is significant and positive. In other words, we're saying the relationship between capital formation on a farm and agricultural output is positive and significant. But then what does it mean? What would drive that? We now want you to explain that, for instance, that if a farmer has got an increase in the equipment that they need to do the farming, that will enable them to produce more, holding other things constant. In other words, we say if the farmer is going to have sufficient water or rainfall, if the farmer is going to have sufficient labor, if the farmer is going to have sufficient inputs, then with an increase or adequate capital formation or adequate equipment, they should be able to produce enough to justify the cost of that production. So essentially, that's what we would expect to see in your report. But then you need to support that kind of claim by perhaps some empirical literature from other studies to say that your results may be consistent or similar to those that were done by other people. You can also relate this to the theory itself to say, how does this particular outcome relate to the theory that you have sitting in your literature review section? For me, that is very important. I'm not going to dwell a lot on this. I'm going to exit this slide, this particular, and move on to this. I'm sure that we are almost towards the end of our lecture. Okay, finally, I think when it comes to reporting the results, I think that's what I was talking about. Present the findings according to the research objectives, which means that you need to make sure that all your research objectives have been answered. What I would recommend, especially for your thesis and dissertations, is that as you report your results, indicate the objective that you are now going to report, and say these results are in respect of objective number 1, and do the write-up. And so that the reader knows that all the objectives have been addressed. Even yourself, you are able to reconcile the work that you've done to say, I've now addressed all the research objectives. Other than that, there's a risk of missing some of the reporting that would be crucial for your study. Compare the results with previous empirical studies, which is what I've just alluded to, and then compare the results with theory underpinning your study. When reporting the results of regression analysis, check the sign of the coefficients. I think lead you towards whether you can confirm theory or not confirm theory. In other words, where the positive coefficient, it should tell you that the relationship between two variables under consideration is positive. But you need to now check that with theory to say, is that what theory says? And of course, it's always important to say whether or not the relationships are significant or insignificant. For me, it's not very important whether relationships are significant or not significant, but it is that relationship that matters most for me, whether, as in the sign of the coefficient as to whether it's positive or negative. Yeah, I think that brings us to the end of our lecture. I must thank you for your patience with me, especially between interchanging of slides. And again, thank you for choosing to sign into this particular lecture. And thank you to the management and organizers of this particular lecture. Back to you, Vinolia.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Chisasa. I believe that the presentation was insightful and helpful. So now I believe that we're going to go straight to the questions, and you'll be able to assist the audiences with answers. We have the first question from Ida, which says, how do we carry out the Cambridge test?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Prof. It says, the first question is from Ida. It says, How do we carry out the Cronbach's test?
How do you carry out the Cronbach alpha test?
Yes.
I think it's, with the advent of technology and these softwares that we have, it's for me, I think just use your SPSS, the latest version. It will show you step by step how to get to the Cronbach alpha test. But most importantly, make sure that you've got sufficient data for all the constructs for which you want to test for the Cronbach alpha. Which is where I recommended that before you carry on with that, consider consulting your statistician, because they will be able to tell you how many questions you will need for a particular construct, depending also on the scale that you'll be using for your questionnaire. Sometimes you find that some people use a 5-point Likert scale, others use a 7-point Likert scale. So that those two will be different, and so you have to do some computation on, depending on the scale that you are using. I would suggest that you consider doing that, and of course using the software available to you to do not calculation, but the determination of the Cronbach alpha. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. We do have another question from Josephine, which says, could you please explain predictive analysis briefly?
Predictive analysis is where you use, say, your econometric models to, say, predict the interest rate for, say, 5 years, 10 years down the line, or your sales. I think this is mainly used by, this can be used for projects where you want to establish a particular project, say a new existing project, but you want to determine the future of the performance of the entity that you're going to be using. So you can even use your regression or your econometric techniques that are suited for predicting particular series. Let's say if you want to estimate your sales in a particular product, and you've started a new business, but you want to see how best or is going to fare that particular performance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. I believe that the question has been answered accordingly. And moving forward, we do have another question from Tombi, which says, what other tests can be run from a regression when testing correlation between variables?
Sorry, say again?
The question says, what other tests can be run from regression when testing correlations between variables? Did you get it, sir?
You can do tests for, say, if, for instance, you are test. If you want to do the causality test or to test for the causal relationship, then you can use the Granger causality test. That will help you to determine those outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Pleasure.
We do have another question which says, will the presentation be accessible? Can the links for the various studies you made reference to be shared?
I think I've lost Vinoli.
Okay, Okay, the question was about the links to be shared, but we're going to move forward from
that.
that.
I can probably use those to determine the entire question is and whether the slides, the presentation will be shared.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is that it depends on the organizers of the lecture, but it's available to them. And the links also are accessible. They're also embedded in they're also part of the presentation. But if there's anyone who is failing to download those articles, by all means, please feel free to contact me or the organizers of the lecture, and I'll share the articles with them. The alternative would be to just go to Google Scholar and type my name. If you are subscribed to because some sites will require you to be subscribed to be able to access those articles. And so if you fail to do that, please.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I think we'll make an exception for that. We do have another question from Samuel, which says, what guides the researcher conducting a quantitative study with regards to sample size?
What guides?
It says, what guides the researcher conducting a quantitative study with regards to sample size?
Head here, please feel free to fill in the gaps of the question.
Okay, the question says, what guides the researcher conducting a quantitative study with regards to sample size?
Oh, okay. The sample size is a function of the what do you call it? Of the population of that study. And again, like I said, you have to use a formula to calculate if you don't know the population, there's a way of determining the sample size. I can share. Let me see if I can share the formula with you. If it's not going to be. If it's not going to take much of your time, or otherwise you can send me an email and then I can assist you with that particular formula. I think it's better that way. For those who are conducting research for which the population is unknown, yeah, you can contact me or share with you the formula for determining your sample size.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I think that will be very helpful.
Yeah.
Yes. We do have another question which says, what can we, if the response rate is very low, after almost 2 years, only 38 responses out of 650? Any suggestions how to analyze this, or what test can be compiled, or is frequency the only way?
I think there are numbers there I didn't get right. How many questions?
Okay, we have.
What I've heard is that the data, the number of respondents is far less than what would be useful for advanced techniques of data analysis.
Yes, if the numbers are very low, for an example, almost 2 years, only 38 responses out of 650. So what would be the suggestion on how to analyze this, and what tests can be compiled, or is frequencies the only way?
First of all, I don't recommend that somebody goes for as long as 2 years trying to put together data. especially of a survey nature, because even probably by the time you complete your study, the results may no longer be as useful as they were intended to do originally. Again, if you are a student, I can imagine what 2 years means to your study period. Say you're doing a master's degree, which we expect you to complete, say, in 3 years, and 2 years of it is spent doing data collection. You should consider alternative strategies or an alternative design for that matter. But if it happens that the 2 years have gone by and you've got 38 respondents from a possible 650, then I think what you will probably need to do there is your best bet will be your frequencies, your cross tabulations, maybe. I think that's as far as you can go. A bit of correlations, maybe, but not a good idea. I think the best for you would be your frequencies and your cross tabulations. Thank you. I think I must emphasize that you don't have to try and square circle. If the data is not there, it is not there. You don't force it to do what you want it to do when it can't do it. Don't massage the data.
You massage the data. You're massaging the data. Oh.
Okay, I think we're going to move forward.
My friend.
Sorry, sir. Can you please mute your mic? Because we can hear everything you're saying. Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to move forward. The next question says, can we use factor analysis as the final without succeeding with the regression analysis?
Let me say that what you use depends on your research objectives. Regression analysis is only used when you want to test relationships between variables, as in if you want to see the contribution of one variable to the other, is when you use regression analysis. So in this lecture, I cannot really dictate or recommend a particular technique ahead of the other without a specified research objective. So I would say that read other articles that are been used to test similar objectives to what you are testing. Otherwise, if there are no relationships that are being tested that warrant the use of regression analysis, by all means, you can end it at factor analysis, even at frequencies for that matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe that has been answered. The next question says, can you briefly explain descriptive analysis? When one wants to access a statistician, can one contact the university where he or she is registered?
I think descriptive statistics is when you use your averages, normally referred to as the mean, the median, the mode, the standard deviation. Many a time when we use it with respect to primary data, we'll be looking at, for instance, how people responded to certain questions. We can use it to determine how many people on a scale of respondents were to a particular score. For instance, if we're using a scale of a 5-point Likert scale, and we find that the mean score for that for a particular question was, say, 2.5 with a standard deviation of 1. You'll find that we will see that some people would have answered at somewhere around 3.5, leaning towards 4, or 1.5, between 1.5 and 2, of which we know that there isn't a response of 1.5. So you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if you twin that with the numbers, or the number of people that would have responded, say anything between 3 and 4, then you should be able to determine the kind of response that was more, more dominant, so to speak. And that's how you will use your descriptive statistics. But ideally, you need to report on your mean, you need to report on your standard deviation, and I think for me, that is most important.
Yes.
And well, the second part of the question was whether we can conduct a university for the purposes of accessing a This is university specific.
Okay, thank you, sir. We're gonna move to the next question, which says, in terms...
Sorry?
Oh, you can continue, sir. I think it's my network.
Yeah, at other universities, they provide statisticians. So you need to know whether or not your particular university offers a statistical analysis support. And if they do, you also need to know whether it is funded by the university or you are the one who is supposed to fund it yourself. However, on that score, I think I want to emphasize the need and importance for students to self-teach on how to analyze their own data. The importance of analyzing your own data is that you get to understand your own story better than anybody else. And so take time. You need to attend workshops on data analysis. Please do that by all means. If it means more than once, please do it. Of course, it's expensive, but sometimes you find that it tends to be more useful than to even use a statistician to help you with that. So my advice is learn how to analyze your data. It works best. Sorry about that noise. I think I've answered that one to the best of my ability. Any other question?
Yes, sir. We do have another question from Dombi, which says, in terms of sampling, if I'm planning to collect data from participants in various regions, can this be called cluster sampling?
Well, I think a research project provincial data, or not provincial data, but district data. In other words, you're looking at, say,
We've lost the Prof.
Sorry about that. I think our guest speaker is having some connection problems. Can we please allow him some time to join back as we will continue with the questions?
No,
Yes.
no.
Prof, I'm just reconnected. I just switched. Colleagues, sorry about that disorder. I had to reconnect to another network. I just got disconnected. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you say.
We can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Prof.
Can we continue with the questions?
Okay, that's fine. So
yes.
I'm very hesitant to. Yeah. Please carry on.
Can I read the next question? It says it's from.
Hello.
Prof, is your network okay now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Thokozani.
I think it is. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
The question says how best you can advise the students at proposal phase to establish congruence between the phrasing of research objectives and suitable methods to answer the RQs. Did you get that, say?
Vinalia, I heard part of what you said about research proposal students, and the second part I didn't get quite well.
Yeah,
Prof, okay.
Vinalia, can I also suggest, Prof, you can just check on the chat. Maybe if you can just check on the chat in front of you, then Vinalia can guide you so that you can just maybe just go to.
Hello, Vinalia, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. As Prof has advised that you should also check on the chat box so that you can follow on which questions we are presenting.
Right.
Okay, sir, if you can hear me, we are on Thokozani Mbele.
Okay, that's fine. I can see the last item that I see posted on the chat is a response from Ida Khan saying that you can hear me. So I don't see any question there yet. If you can hear me.
Oh, okay. Okay,
if there's
no.
any questions, please post them. I'm watching my chat.
Okay, in the meantime, I think I'll be reading out the questions for you, and then you'll take it over when other questions comes. we are on Thokozani, where he was saying how best you can advise the students at proposal. I think we have lost him again, and sorry about that.
Yeah, colleagues, Vinolia, can I suggest that we take note of the questions that are coming, and then you could be able to consolidate them, and I'm sure Prof. Chisasa wouldn't mind responding to the questions. Colleagues, would that be something that we can take home with?
Certainly, Prof. I think under the circumstances, that would be welcome.
Yes, the slides are available after this presentation, and the link is also available. So you can post questions if you have additional questions regarding on all the other topics that we've worked on. You can send the questions to Vinolia, and Vinolia will liaise to the facilitator, and she can consolidate the responses and forward it to the participants.
The slides, Prof, are accessible from Vinolia, so one should drop Vinolia an email.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
That's correct. Vinolia, over to you. You can probably close your session.
Okay, thank you very much for everyone for their patience. And as a Prof has indicated, I have earlier sent out my email address where you can get the presentation slides and present your questions as well. And also for those who are requesting the audios or the recordings, we do have them on our social media platforms. Please follow us on our social media platforms. That's where you'll get every update on the recordings and also on the next sessions which we are going to be hosting. And on social media platforms, we are African Institute for Supply Chain Research. So our next RSWS session is on the 8th of July, 2021, and we'll be engaging on a topic of understanding mixed method research design with Dr. Mike, who is going to be our next speaker, Dr. Mike Manga. So I would like for everyone to please avail yourself for the next session as we'll be engaging on this most topic of mixed methods research designs. So I would like to thank you all for this time that you have availed yourself and to come and join us on this meeting. And as we depart, I would like to wish everyone a good day further. And until we meet again next week, and we have a game changer for next week, which will be hosted by Dr. Faith Mashele. So I would request for everyone to please join us on Tuesday from 5 p.m. until 18:30. So that's where we'll be having our Game Changer series next week, Tuesday. Please mark the date and also check our social media platforms. That's where we'll be giving you all the updates. So without wasting anyone's time, I would like to say enjoy the rest of your day and thank you for coming along for this session. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you to the Prof and to the colleagues.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.